for leaks. Finally, start and test drive the vehicle to be sure of the proper diagnosis.
Starting in 1982, Ford vehicles equipped with fuel injection have an inertia switch located in the high-pressure fuel pump electrical circuit. In the event of a collision, the inertia switch shuts off the fuel going to the engine. This is a safety device built into the vehicle to prevent the fuel pump from continually pumping fuel in the event of a ruptured or broken fuel line. When a collision occurs, the sudden shock causes a circuit to open up inside the switch, tripping a red or white reset button. Once the switch has been tripped, the vehicle will not start until the button has been reset. Depending on the vehicle, the inertia switch will be located in one of many areas and locations. On Ford trucks and vans, the inertia switch will be located in the left or right-hand kick panel, under the dash near the radio, or behind the glove compartment. On Ford sedans and station wagons, the inertia switch will be located in the left or right side of the trunk, either on a hinge support or the rear corner pillar. Once the inertia switch has been located, remove any panels or carpeting to gain access to the switch. On many vehicles, the switch may have to be unbolted from the vehicle in order to gain access to the reset button. If your vehicle has been in a collision, the reset button may have been tripped. Before resetting the switch, some precautions must be observed before pressing the reset button down and restarting the vehicle. If you smell or see spilled gasoline, do not start the vehicle. A rupture anywhere in a fuel line could cause gas to be sprayed over hot surfaces, starting a fire. Make sure to perform a thorough inspection for fuel leakage before resetting the button and starting the vehicle. If no leakage is found, reset the button on the switch and start the vehicle. The inertia switch can also be used when relieving the fuel system pressure on the vehicle. By tripping the inertia switch, it affords a simple and convenient way by which residual fuel pressure can be relieved before servicing any fuel system components, such as the fuel filter. There are two ways to open the fuel pump electrical circuit using the inertia switch. Either unplug the inertia switch electrical connector or tap on the switch lightly with a screwdriver until the reset button trips. Next, start the engine and allow it to run until it stops. Residual fuel system pressure is now relieved. When you are finished working on the fuel system, simply plug the electrical connector back onto the switch, or if you tripped the switch, rearm it by depressing the reset button. If the switch was removed, reinstall it back onto the vehicle, and reattach any panels or carpeting that was removed.
Now let's quickly recap how to locate and reset the inertia switch on Ford vehicles. On trucks, the inertia switch will usually be located inside the cab on one of the kick panels or under the dash near the radio or glove box. On sedans, it's usually located in the left or right side of the trunk near a hinge support, or on station wagons near a rear pillar. You may need to remove an access panel to locate it. If the switch has been tripped, you will be able to see a red or white button that has popped up. Simply push down on this button to reset the switch. Turn the ignition switch to the run position and check the entire fuel system for leaks before actually starting the engine.
The items you need to test your mechanical fuel pump include a plastic container of more than 1 pint capacity, a set of combination and flare nut wrenches, a fuel pressure gauge, a screwdriver, a piece of rubber fuel line, and a pair of safety glasses and work gloves. Before testing the fuel pump, start and run the engine until it reaches operating temperature. With the engine running, closely watch the fuel pump. If you notice any fuel or oil leaks coming from the pump, shut the engine off immediately and replace the pump. If no visible signs of leakage are present and the vehicle has reached its normal operating temperature and is idling at the proper speed, shut it off. The first step is to test fuel pump pressure. First, carefully disconnect the fuel line from the pump at the fuel pump outlet. Then connect the fuel pressure gauge to the fuel line with enough flexible hose to enable you to hold the gauge about 16 inches above the fuel pump. The hose must not be smaller in diameter than the actual fuel line. Start and run the engine. It'll run on the fuel in the carburetor. Note and record the reading on the gauge. Generally, this reading will be between 4 and 7 pounds per square inch, but check a service manual for the correct specifications on your particular vehicle. Next, check the amount or volume of fuel the pump is supposed to deliver. First, reconnect the fuel line and run the engine for a moment to replace the fuel in the carburetor. Once again, disconnect the line and attach a piece of flexible fuel line to the end. Start the engine and allow fuel to run into the container for about 15 seconds. Make sure you are wearing eye protection during this test. After 15 seconds, shut the engine off and compare the volume of fuel in the container to the specifications listed for your vehicle. If the volume is less than the specified amount, attach an auxiliary fuel supply to the inlet side of the fuel pump. A small gas can with a hose can be used for this purpose. Repeat the volume test and compare it to the previous one. If the volume is changed or is now normal, the problem lies within the fuel lines or fuel tank. If the volume is still low, the fuel pump needs to be replaced.
Now let's quickly recap the procedures for testing a mechanical fuel pump. Begin by visually inspecting the pump while the engine is running. If any fuel or oil leaks are noticed, replace the pump. Next, perform a pressure check of the pump. Disconnect the fuel supply line near the carburetor. Connect that line to a fuel pressure test gauge. Start the engine and note the reading on the gauge. Compare your reading to the specifications from a Haynes manual. If the pressure is lower than specified, replace the pump. Next, perform a volume test. You may need to reconnect the fuel line to the carburetor and start the engine to refill the float bulb. Once again, with the engine shut off, disconnect the fuel line near the carburetor. Route it into a 1-quart or larger container. Start the engine and run it for 15 seconds. Compare the volume of fuel in the container to the specifications for your vehicle listed in the Haynes manual. If the amount of fuel is less than specified, replace the pump.
The items you need to replace your mechanical fuel pump include a regular blade screwdriver, a set of flare nut wrenches, a 3/8 drive socket set, a set of rubber plugs the size of your fuel lines, a gasket scraper, gasket sealer, a new gasket, and the correct replacement fuel pump. To prevent burns when working under the hood, always start repairs with a cool engine. First, locate the fuel pump. Mechanical fuel pumps are normally mounted on the side of the engine block. Remove the fuel inlet and outlet lines from the fuel pump. We recommend using flare nut wrenches on metal lines to prevent damage to the fittings. Use rubber vacuum caps to plug the ends of the fuel lines. This will prevent dirt from entering them and fuel from running out. If it's a rubber line, a small bolt and hose clamp works well to plug the line. Now you can remove the fuel pump mounting bolts and the fuel pump. Now lightly coat the mounting surface of the replacement fuel pump with gasket sealer. When the sealer becomes tacky, position the new gasket on the fuel pump. This will help hold the new gasket in place when you position the fuel pump on the engine block. Next, remove any remaining gasket material still attached to the fuel pump mounting surface on the engine block. Some General Motors and Chrysler vehicles use a rod between the fuel pump arm and the camshaft that must be held in place when installing the replacement fuel pump. This can be easily accomplished by applying a thick coat of grease to the rod and pushing it up into place.